Welcome to this episode of Random Guy number 6. Today I'm going to be doing a full bedroom remodel. We're going to do all new paint, new outlets, new switches, new fan, and all new flooring because it has the old, ugliest, nastiest carpet I've seen in a while. So let's get to it. First I'm going to begin by removing the closet doors just to get these things out of the way. Then to remove the carpet itself, I just need to use a razor blade specific for carpets and cut this thing into strips and roll it up to make it easier to dispose of, so that it can fit in your regular garbage cans that go out by the street. This is going to be the same process for removing the carpet pad. Now the carpet pad was glued down, so just get a sturdy putty knife and scrape any leftover glue or imperfections in the floor off. For the tack strip, just grab a pry bar and beat on this thing and get it up however is necessary. The trim on this house was finished with a bead of caulk that needs to be cut away from the wall before we can remove the trim. If this caulk wasn't removed, when I would remove the trim, I would likely peel off big chunks of paint and drywall and would create a lot more work than is necessary. To remove the trim, we just take a pry bar and hammer and gently tap behind it and peel the trim away, sliding the pry bar down as you go and keeping pressure on the trim with your other hand. If you're worried about damaging the drywall by just using a pry bar, you can use a firm putty knife and tap it back behind the trim to give you the leverage for the pry bar. I'm going to be reusing all of this trim, so I'm being as careful as I can not to damage anything. Make sure to remove any excess caulk that was left on the wall with a putty knife. Then fill any holes and imperfections in the walls with spackling or drywall mud. And it's finally time to remove this old fan from 1956. Now that all the prep work is done, it's finally time to do some painting. So I'm going to use a sprayer on the bulk of everything. I'm going to be doing a white ceiling, the entire closet's going to be white, the doors are going to be white, the trim is going to be white, but I am going to paint the walls a different color, and we'll do that after everything is already basically kind of white. So let's get to it. Make sure to mix your paint really well, even if it's white, and even if they mixed it at the store. Then mix all of your gallons together in a 5-gallon bucket so that you don't have any variations in color or finish. Using a sprayer in a closet where you're painting the shelves and everything just makes life so much easier. Just make sure to put 2 coats on the walls and ceiling and 3 coats on any areas that are going to be used as shelves to give it a little bit of extra durability. The ceiling is going to be getting 2 coats of paint. Now try not to paint your foam, but if you do, clean it off quick and continue. Your doors and trim are going to be the most abused thing, so make sure you put 3 coats of paint on those. When I start painting the walls, I cut everything out on one wall first and blend it out, so when I roll it out, I can blend the roller into the cut lines and everything will disappear. If the lighting in your room is good, then try to use the natural lighting when cutting your ceiling lines. If you use the shadow line as your guide, even if the line is not actually straight, it will appear straight because it's following the natural shadow of the room. Take your time with this step, and if you don't get it perfect, don't worry. You can make minor adjustments on the second coat and really dial it in. When rolling, I always make sure to roll it sideways across every edge to blend the paint into my cut lines. This way they will completely disappear. When rolling your walls, put a ton of paint on the roller and back roll the area several times to spread the paint out, and this will make sure you don't have vertical roller marks going up and down your wall when you look at it in the light from a sideways angle. Installing this style of fan is super easy. It's literally 6 screws, 3 wires, and ta-da, it's done. Ooh, pretty. The electrical and the painting is 100% complete, so now let's get started on the floor. The flooring here is concrete, so a vapor barrier is required. I'm going to be using a foam pad and taping all the seams, but I would suggest always putting a pad down, regardless of the subfloor, because it does make walking on the floor a little bit more comfortable. Now we separate and organize the planks, because most vinyl or laminate flooring come with between 5 and 7 different patterns, and that is it. Before we start actually laying the flooring, measure the full length of the room, and then measure the width of your flooring, and then divide the little number into the big number. The reason for doing this is you don't want to end up with a tiny little 1-inch strip at the end. So if you need to make adjustments beforehand and cut the first row, you can do that. Luckily, I don't need to make any cuts on my first row, so I lay the first piece down, put a spacer against the wall, and take the next piece and click it in. Then tap the pieces together gently with a hammer, and then it's just rinse and repeat for a while. Here I've come to a doorway, so what you want to do is lay a piece of flooring down and then take a multi-tool and cut the bottom of the door frame so that you can slide the flooring underneath that door frame. This will give you that finished look you want. Mark the outsides of the walls onto the plank, measure the distance between the planks, and put those marks on your flooring. I've got a rounded edge on one of my corners, so I use this piece of trim and trace that out. Any straight lines that are easy to access, I use a chop saw, and then I'll finish off this cut with a jigsaw. Here's my test fit, and it looks pretty good, and it almost looks like I know what I'm doing. Since I'm happy with the test fit, I need to put these little triangle pieces in the corner so that I can attach everything together and continue on. It really does take a little bit of thought when doing a randomized pattern, especially because, as I mentioned earlier, you only have about 7 different patterns at most to choose from. And to try and make it look like you don't have only 7 different boards across the entire floor. Finally, we're on to our last row, and we're going to measure the gap in 3 different spots, just in case the wall is not straight, and then transfer those numbers onto the board. If you don't have a straight edge to make a straight line, then you can just grab another piece of flooring and easily mark a nice dark straight line across the entire board. Using a skill saw, jigsaw, or table saw, simply follow the line that you drew on the board. Once you get the front edge of your board snapped in, I find it easiest just to use a pry bar to snap the pieces together. They do make a specific flooring tool which you can see on the left, but the gap needs to be a little bit bigger when using those. I like to keep my gaps as tight as I can within reason. Check, double check, and triple check that everything is locked and clicked together and laying down flat. And the flooring is now done. Moving on to the threshold between the vinyl flooring and the existing tile, I clean up the concrete with a wire brush and vacuum everything out to make sure it's clean. I have pre-cut these pieces to fit, so all I need to do is put an excessive amount of construction adhesive on everything and lay them down into place. Once the top piece is placed in, put some weights on it and let it sit for 24 hours before use. Moving on to the trim. Since I used the original trim to the room, I don't need to make any cuts or anything. I just need to match up the pieces to the wall, use a brad nailer, and attach it, making sure that it's secure. The gaps in the corners between the trim pieces I fill using some trim caulk and then smear it out with my fingers to make it smooth and have it disappear. The excess caulk from that process I use to fill the holes in the trim where the nails are. So this bedroom here in the sunny state of California is 100% updated. All of the outlets, the switches, the paint, the flooring, we are done. So I'm off to Arizona, then I'm going to Colorado. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.